made a statement on my Facebook that said mandatory as a word in the public domain harms everybody. Capiche? An example of why this is the fact would be mandatory things. The first thing you think of is mandatory to wear a seatbelt when driving. Well, now think about that. Mandatory V ATONOMY. If you're sitting in traffic and you're not even moving your car and it's sweltering and you're feeling irritable and jerked off and you're moving at 1 mile an hour, autonomy tells you you should be able to take your seatbelt off because you've done a risk assessment over your situation. But how many people take the seatbelt off? They mandatorily sit there with the thing chafing, the hot, the heat, getting irritable, whatever, in 1 mile an hour traffic, 2 mile an hour, 5 mile an hour, 3 mile, 4, 5. So basically, mandatory in such situations grooms a certain inability to think for oneself, a disempowering, imbalanced vibe all around because it's become mandatory. Mandatory. Like man's territory to ship their shit all over you and give you tickets. Now, I don't think tickets, I mean, so we've all come into contact with police and the way their attitudes are unfaltering in their egotistical, authoritative abuse, want for dominance over the subject, not the literally submissiveness. So if you're sitting there and you've just taken it off for a breather, sitting in traffic, say, and you come approached by a copper, they're going to say, it's mandatory. And you say, but I have autonomy. No, you don't. Not in a vehicle because it's the law. So it's not subjective. It's not objective. It's not whatever the word I'm looking for. It's not. It's rigid and disempowering, just as a dynamic in the first place. When it comes to things like masks, I took a total front foot straight away because it's so the factors are just monumentally ridiculous. It's media channels, industrial interests. It's doubt. Why should you take at face value what's being presented on the news? Why should you take any of that? When they called it corona, that read like a bleach bottle and a toilet duck, which is a household germ which then evolved into evolved. And it was just like, it was ridiculous. So the factors coming at you are questionable. Your autonomy tells you that you might have religious beliefs that do make you exempt, and then you walk around places and they just call it a disability because you're not becoming mandatorily inflicted with another disempowering dynamic. But there are some people that choose to live in their truth, and that's autonomy. It's not a disability. It's not a hidden disability. It's not an exemption because you were abused and something happened with your mouth, which is a lot of people, other factors, whatever, in our society, of which there are many. They might be, but to be exempt is to say that you don't like Babylon much. You might be of ilk that you don't actually use the mainstream healthcare system or Bupa, and thus you don't have exemption cards. You just write it on a piece of paper for yourself. Autonomy would be, I am exempt because I tell you I am exempt. Nothing more, nothing less than a deep, profound respect for your fellow brothers and sisters. Not because of an industrial connotation. And that's where I'd like to see humanity heading in the Western civilised world. You don't need a stamp from an industrial tax bunny haven, industrial things. You'll get lost in your wage slips and everything else. But just a little note on a piece of paper hanging around your neck. Exempt. Why? Because I'm autonomous. And it's just a dynamic that people should just respect. And police, if you're a good police officer, should respect if someone's going at 1 mile an hour up to 10 sitting in traffic. There's a level of autonomy that should come into play, and risk assessments, because not to use your mind is an affront to the human race. And a mandatory is, it's a very damaging word. It should always be looked into very, screw politics.